if teams continue to look for QBs, multiple teams have expressed interest in Raiders quarterback Derek Carr. Not a surprise at all. It's that time of year. Expect the interest to continue to heat up as long as Carr's contract situation remains as it is. Vic Tafer in The Athletic wrote, there's no rush to get something done. One knowledgeable person told me this week, only the media is in a rush. For the time being, I'll add this little non-Derek note, Dave Ziegler will continue to look at the cards in his hand while keeping them close to his Raiders pullover. The fact that he nor McDaniels would say whether Alex Leatherwood is a tackle or a guard is a bad sign to me. Sorry, simply playing a lot of games is not a strength. Anyway, not Derek related, but I thought a good little add-on there from Vic.
I agree. I mean, their comments on Leatherwood. Here's where I push back about them like, oh, only the media is making a big deal of this. Not really. You have a quarterback who has been a pretty polarizing guy for years, who's going in the last year of his contract, and you're a new administration. I think it's the number one question that would be asked in any market, right? What's up with the quarterback? What's your quarterback situation? You going to extend him? That was a major question mark with John Gruden. Were they going to replace him? Were they going to replace him? I would say Derek has been the number one talking point for the Raiders for 5 years running, right? For a long period of time.
Yeah.
Non-Gruden. Yeah, but I'd even is he good enough to be a franchise guy? That he had the big year, then he gets extended, and then he kind of fell apart, and then he got his value back, and then it's well, can he be a top 10 guy again? Is Gruden going to look for his guy? Now, is Josh going to want to coach him? To me, it has a lot of merit behind it, but I would say until he's not signed, it is a major question mark, and here's what we know. We talked about it last year when Sando's tears came out about Derek's value. We talked about it forever with Gruden. If they wanted to trade him, they could have got a one. His value right now, given how desperate teams like the Commanders are, I would say at minimum, if the Raiders were open to trading for him, and we know they've gotten calls about trades. That was reported last week that they have been getting calls, trade offers. I think there are probably some standing offers that a couple ones and a two, maybe 2 1s and 2 2s, because if Jalen Ramsey's going for 2 1s and 2 2s, or 2 1s and a 2. I would say at minimum, Derek's a more valuable player because he's a quarterback, 2 1s, 2 2s. When you have those type offers just on the table and you haven't signed a guy and you know the number on the contract is going to be 40 plus a year, I do think you sit down when you get back to the combine and it's just less crazy and you just have meetings like, hey guys, let's just talk out the scenarios on our team, right? Because one of the stories is Max Crosby, they've already in negotiations with Max Crosby. Of course they are. Just like the Niners were in negotiations with George Kittle before they would be in negotiations with Nick Bosa. It's easier to negotiate contracts in the $20, $30, $40 million guarantee range. It's much more the Rams and Matt Stafford, it's going to be some negotiating going back and forth, right? It's just part of the deal.
Or Aaron Donald.
You give $100+ million guarantees. But with TJ Watt, it makes sense. It's easy to do at the end of the day. You're ready to do the George Kittle deals. It's just is he going to be willing to sign for $30 million guaranteed? Because we are. So I just think you're having a conversation. Now, I don't know who you'd replace him with. Someone DM me, what do you think about a swap? I don't exactly know the compensation, but something that would involve Kyler Murray, Derek Carr. And I'd say, well, the Cardinals would probably have to get back. You would think Derek for Kyler straight up wouldn't happen. But I would say Josh's history, New England, they don't want drama at quarterback. So I would say Derek actually makes a lot more sense for Josh. But you'd say both guys expect. Now, Kyler is under contract a little bit longer, right? He's going into his 4th year. You have a 5th-year option. Derek literally has 1 more year.
But in a weird way, Kyler could end up being more expensive because it's 1 year later. Right.
I think Kyler thinks at minimum.
And there's no discount coming from Kyler.
I think he thinks Josh Allen's contract, minimum. Right. Yeah. That's the starting point.
Yeah.
Where Derek, could you get him 4 years, $140 million, so average 40 a year, but 110 guaranteed? Or I don't know. I'm just.
Well, I think you're hitting on it, and Russell on the stream is saying it.
Derek wants to stay.
Derek, finding the replacement if you're going to trade an established quarterback, which is what Carr is the hard part. All your compensation, all your picks, everything you get is all well and good if you want to start a rebuild. But I don't think the Raiders want to start a rebuild. Josh McDaniels has already lost 1 NFL job. Mark Davis has already had an empty stadium for a year in Las Vegas. It's time for them to start. They've had multiple reasons to want to win right now.
Well, I saw Josh gave a quote. I don't know if it was to Rich or maybe it was sat down with Florio. And he's right. He's like, this is not a rebuild. They went 10 and they were in the playoffs. Like, we plan on winning. So if you say you plan on winning, which they do, you need a quarterback. But the quarterback, it's not a black and white issue because, like, well, do you view this guy as a guy that you're going to give $40 million a year to? Because that's ultimately, like, he is, the one thing the New England guys, and specifically him, because he's basically spent, give or take 20 years there, they have never had to give a guy top of the market money. Besides, I guess, Tom way back in, part of that book.
Even Tom was taking pay cuts.
Yeah, it was like, Tom just got extended in 2012 for $67 million. So are you comfortable giving a guy, because I think right now they would give him like a 2-year extension for $75 million, right? They would do that in a heartbeat, but it makes no sense for Derek to do that. Unless he's just like, hey, you get some more money, you'll basically make another $100 million over 3 years, and you just get to work with Josh and go from there. And you can still sign a long-term contract at 30. How old is Derek? 32 years old, 31 years old. You can still sign another contract.
What's the least amount of money Derek would take?
Well, right now, would they sign a contract extension for Derek Carr for 2 years, $40 million, 2 years, $80 million, guarantee every penny. So basically, this year 20. So it's like the equivalent of a 3-year, $100 million
$100 million deal. Boy, I don't know. I think they'd want that number to be 35, right?
Who?
Could you do the Raiders? So is Derek willing to do? Is Josh telling him, "Hey, this is what Tom always did. Tom always took less so that we could go get Amari Cooper. Tom always took less."
Well, when you say 3 for 100,
basically
basically works out to like 3 for 100. What does that work out to? Like 3 for what's 3 times 3 is 90. Yeah. But I mean, Derek's not a $33 million quarterback on the open market. That's the problem. It's a complicated issue because it's just, we saw it with Dak Prescott. Like, once you start paying $40 million for a guy that's like the 11th best quarterback, you feel okay because you can compete, but you're like, we'd like a little more.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna age well. I'd say Stafford guy's right on. He's on the other side, but he's closer to the line than he is like in just no man in like cruise control, right? Like, you feel great with Rodgers, you feel great with Brady, you feel great with Mahomes, you feel great with Josh. Stafford's over the line, but there are a lot of moments with Stafford, and maybe he just never looks back now. But let's not act like he's some perfect player.
No, but I think a lot of this is dependent on where you play. Matthew Stafford's worth more to the Rams than he is worth to the Lions. So is Josh McDaniels a good enough coach that he can make Derek Carr worth more to the Raiders now than he's been worth to the Raiders before? Right.
Well, did John make him that in the last couple of years? Wouldn't you say?
He helped him. He did help him. Finally, they got him a defense.
But they made his play far exceeded his $20 million a year salary or whatever, right?
Right. But it was partly because his salary was so low.
Yeah, and it's because he was
like a player.
He's a $32 million player, but no one was ever like, God, he's a $45 million player. And ultimately, these numbers do matter because it's how you build your team.
I think the first move is Josh tries to play the Tom card. This is what Tom did. This is what it took in New England. You're going to be you're going to be wealthy. What is it that you want? Do you want to be a Raider for life, like you've said you want? Do you want to win here? Be a legend here. Lead the Raiders back to glory. You're not going to get paid $40 million a year to do it.
Well, I'd say beside Tom Brady, I mean, we'd have to do like a deep dive. It doesn't feel like any player in the NFL has done that the last like 5 years. Right? Just be like, oh my God, this guy just took $8 million less a year than he could have got just because he loves it. Like, that has not happened in the National Football League.
No.
Especially a quarterback. But
would we be saying that if Derek hadn't been so adamant so many times that this is the only place he wants to play?
Well, Derek's made $110 million in his career on the field. I'd say, he's made millions off. I don't know how many millions, but he's already, he even said in that little kid interview, he's like, I got more money than I even know what to do with right now. So it is a pitch possible. But if I told you that it comes out, breaking, Derek Carr signed a 5-year extension averaging $27 million a year, don't you think people would be like, oh my, they just got him shocked to take one?
Even if that number is fully guaranteed $135 million?
But Tom Brady took, like, if you're asking him to do the Brady was taking $25 million a year ago.
I know. I'm not saying take Brady's number. I'm just saying take less than the market would pay you.
Well, what's the market?
That's the difference.
What is Derek Carr's market currently right now? 44?
Like free agent market? Yeah, free agent market is because I think just his normal contract market is 40 million. So if he's a free agent,
well, if the Commanders or Denver or any of these teams that they could trade for him, he'd be a trade and immediately extend, right? Wouldn't that be the trade?
Yeah, and part of them acquiring would be understanding that Derek would sign the contract that they want, that they can agree to a contract, right?
Exactly what happened to Khalil Mack, right? When they gave all those picks, they said, the moment he comes, contracts, boom, done deal. Here's the picks. We get Mack, signed deal. He's on our team until we don't want him.
Yeah.
And what's that? That deal would not be like
5 for 200.
It'd be outrageous. Yeah. It'd be shocking to people.
Just $40 million a year, 5 for 200. Which by year 5 might make him the 10th highest paid quarterback in the league.
And it could be $130, $135 million guaranteed, but the thing would be he's going to average $40 million a year. And as we've seen with his last contract, for the most part, you play the majority of the seasons at the position if you don't get hurt, right? If I told you Derek signed a 5-year extension, I would expect him to play out the contract.
Quarterbacks make the money. Yeah.
They make every penny. There's not like Amari, like, bro, you either take a pay cut or we're cutting you or trading you, right? That's where they're at. That never happens to quarterbacks. It's like, oh, Matt, we're just stuck with Matt Ryan. He's going to make us $40 million, you know? If Matt Ryan was a defensive lineman, they'd be like, you take a pay cut or we're sending your ass pink slip.
And then Matt Ryan's making $4 million to play first and second down.
You know, it's just not the way it works.
Matthew says, do you trust the Raiders to spend whatever savings Derek would let them have smartly? Well, I mean, we don't know, right? This is a whole brand new Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniel.
But that's also like, you know, the NFL's hard, man. I think a lot of teams, for the most part, teams get aggressive. Like the Raiders have been aggressive in free agency the last couple of years with Derek savings, right? They just missed, but they were signing guys left and right. It's like, oh, they signed Yannick Ngakoue. Oh, they signed LaMarcus Joyner. Oh, they signed Corey Littleton. Like they tried.